What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, Nintendo made the announcement that some major changes would be coming to the Mario franchise as, well, the original voice actor for Mario was going to be kind of moving on, and we even heard a bit more about Mario Wonder when it comes to online features, so a lot to go over here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Microsoft introducing a new way to dress up your Xbox Series system, and we did get more details coming out around what could have been for Immortals Fenyx Rising with that sequel. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. We're gonna start today with that Metal Gear Solid Collection Volume 1, as there were some previews that took place, and some concerning information has come out from this entire thing. Now, the interesting thing was, apparently all the different outlets had hands-on time with the Switch version specifically, and Nintendo Life even asked Konami about the other versions, and well, we're going to take a look at Nintendo Life and what they said specifically, like word for word, just to make sure we don't get any confusion in here, because that's something that is currently ongoing online. But we can see this posted up over on Nintendo Life, where they say these versions, that being for Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, run at 720p, and the Switch version is also seemingly capped at 30 FPS despite the original HD releases that these are based on, running at 60 FPS. Considering the Switch is more powerful than the two consoles that previously held this pair of games, it's disappointing to say the least that the frame rates have been halved. We asked about performance on PS5, Xbox Series X, plus the newly announced PS4 release. Konami clarified that the games will be targeting the same resolution, 720p, and frame rate of the initial HD releases. Given that Switch isn't running them at 60 FPS, we suppose we'll have to wait and see how things fare on the other platforms. So this is incredibly disappointing, I would say, for the Switch. The fact that it won't have 60 FPS versions of Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 is just weird, because as they're mentioning, the Xbox 360 and the PS3 did run those games, that HD collection, at 60 frames per second. I mean, the PS2 ran those games at 60. That was a big thing, by the way. When Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, it looked really good, and it ran incredibly well. So this is odd, and maybe we'll get more of an update as we get closer to release from Konami, but the fact that they were previewing it like this, and we're just, what, a couple of months out from release, might be looking at a 30 FPS cap on these versions for the Switch, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, we did get some new details for Armored Core 6, that of course coming up this Friday, but some of the details include resolution and frame rate, and it looks like the Xbox Series S is maybe punching a bit above its weight class here. We can see this post up over on the Bandai website with a nice little chart here going over all the different console variations with max resolution. The big one people are pointing out, though, again, the Xbox Series X and S. We have the Series X at 4K up to 60 FPS. That does support ray tracing. That's all pretty much mirrored with the PS5, of course, but the Xbox Series S, interestingly, 1440p up to 60 FPS, and it will also support ray tracing. So again, impressive stuff there for the Series S. Of course, if you want to go all out, grab it on PC up to 120 frames per second, and it will support ultra wide monitor, that's going to look really, really good for Armored Core. But I'm excited to jump into this game when it releases on Friday, and we should be seeing the reviews drop, I feel like, sometime tomorrow. Oh, and for all of you Ghost Runner fans out there, we did get the release date for Ghost Runner 2, as well as a new story trailer that you can see here. The release date that's been announced is, go figure, October 26th. I say go figure because October just continues to stack with releases. It is very crowded in that month, but it is out on the PS5, Xbox Series XS, Epic Game Store, GOG, and Steam. Unfortunately, I just didn't really get into Ghost Runner, so I'm not necessarily jumping at this game at day one when it releases, but let me know down in the comments if this is a really good, well, the first one was good, and that I should be checking it out, which I think it's on PlayStation Plus, so I could always give it a download and check it out. Otherwise, though, look towards the end of a very, very busy month, October 26th. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo announcing a major change for their marquee franchise, that being Super Mario Brothers. And in this case, really the original voice actor, Charles Martinet, is now moving on from voicing any of the characters really with Nintendo. And we can see this statement that was released over on their Twitter account, where they say Charles Martinet has been the original voice of Mario in Nintendo games for a long time, as far back as Super Mario 64. I believe some people mentioned that, oh, he also voiced Mario in like Mario's Typing or something, but let's be real, Nintendo would prefer to reference a game that more people are familiar with, so they went with Super Mario 64, still over 25 years ago, of course. Charles is now moving into the brand new role of Mario Ambassador. With this transition, he'll be stepping back from recording character voices for our games, but he'll continue to travel the world sharing the joy of Mario and interacting with you all. Now, he did voice other characters, Wario, Luigi, many others, but most people obviously know him as the voice of Mario. They go on to say it has been an honor working with Charles to help bring Mario to life for so many years, and we want to thank and celebrate him. Please keep an eye out for a special video message from Shigeru Miyamoto and Charles himself, which we'll post at a future date. Now, it's also important to note that people were wondering, of course, okay, well, is he doing the voices in Super Mario Bros. Wonder? Well, GameXplain did reach out, and according to Nintendo, no, Charles Martinet will not be doing any voices in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and they just said, hey, check out the credits when the game comes out, as we will, of course, be crediting all of the different voice actors there. But yes, it is the end of an era now with Charles Martinet moving, or stepping back, I should say, from being the main voice of Mario and the other characters, and into the role of Mario Ambassador, which means I'm sure he'll still travel around, go to the different events, and probably have a lot of fun. I had a chance to actually meet up very briefly with Charles Martinet at Too Many Games, so like a couple of months ago. He seemed genuinely happy. He did a lot of the autographs and met up with fans and everything, and he's just having a blast doing it. And again, very nice guy. So he's had a long legacy in games, and I'm sure he'll continue to do things outside of just voicing characters as the Mario Ambassador. But yes, end of an era. Charles Martinet, of course, over 25 years voicing Mario and crew there. And I'll be curious to see, I guess, who would be next to then fill the shoes of Charles Martinet for Mario going forward, but I guess we'll find out those details when Super Mario Bros. Wonder comes out and we see the credits. Next up, let's stick with Super Mario Bros. Wonder here for a minute, because it appears there's been another big change made, specifically with some of the verbiage describing the game on the eShop. Now, this was kind of discussed a bit because it didn't necessarily rule out the idea of online play based on some of the eShop listings, but we did have a new entry seemingly added, and we can see this posted up by Genki, who did translate this. And it says the Japanese Nintendo webpage for Super Mario Bros. Wonder says that details of online play will be announced at a later date. Okay, so this is interesting because that was kind of added a little later on, and now the idea is, well, we're what, less than 2 months away now from the game releasing, and they very well could have an ace up their sleeve that, yes, there is full online play with co-op. You and 3 friends can get together and run through the game. The only thing that's odd to me is you feel like that would have been a good reveal for when the game was first shown off, but it could be a way to continue marketing and keep hype strong for the game going into its release, maybe as a reveal at a September Nintendo Direct that people, of course, are already looking towards. That's a way to have that one big final push and announcement. But it still seems odd that they wouldn't have that included on the eShop page until, what, a month before the game comes out? Let's say if there is a Direct in the first half of September. So a month before, they're just telling us that there is online play, which is something that has been brought up basically since Nintendo Europe tweeting out that it was local play specifically, and then the eShop page reflected that. I do want to point out that there are some other things that this could entail. For example, it could be maybe there are leaderboards where how fast can you run through levels, and the times will be compared with your friends. You could even have, I think some were mentioning like ghost data where you can actually see your friend running through the level as you are. Basically not like concurrently playing and potentially messing up each other's runs and having a bunch of lag and different things being brought into play, because we saw what happened with Super Mario Maker 2. So if it is full online play, hopefully they have a better solution than that one, and otherwise maybe there'll just be some fun ways to interact with what your friends have done running through the game. But I'm thinking we're probably going to see this announcement maybe around the time of that September Direct that most people believe will be happening here soon, so we'll keep an eye out for that. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and a new product that they have announced, and that being the Xbox Series X wraps. Yeah, these are things you can wrap around your Xbox, at which point it'll sort of change the theming of it. And instead of having to buy a special edition system, you can just pick up these wraps. And there are a few different variations that they have now announced, 3 in total, one playing into the Starfield release and the other 2 apparently being different camo variants, but we can see this posted up over on the news.xbox.com site, where they say the wraps were designed specifically for Xbox Series X and have a custom precision fit. Every detail was taken into consideration to ensure console performance is preserved, which means, yes, vents are all clear. Small feet were added to the bottom of the wraps to ensure airflow can flow freely around the console. They say that these are made with solid core panels that are layered with like high-tech fabric finishes. So I'm kind of picturing maybe the kind of the covers that you would have for like the Surface, like that, like kind of the tablet there, like almost like the keyboard cover, but they also had one that just went completely over it and protected it when you would travel around. That's sort of at least maybe the texture that I'm picturing for this. I do like the look of the Starfield one, and it appears to kind of loop around the system and then secure in the back, I guess with Velcro is how they have it set up, which I was kind of picturing maybe to be more of a magnetized setup, but I guess Velcro would work fine too. Now the pricing seemed to throw people through a loop similar to what we saw with Sony and their plastic shells feeling kind of expensive for people. This though, the Starfield one in particular, is going to be releasing October 18th for $50. And then we also have the camo variants, one being sort of blue and the other one being gray. We have those at $45, those launching November 10th. So I mean, I like the idea that Sony and Microsoft have figured out here, that being, you don't have to buy a whole new system in order to play into the theme of a brand new release like a Starfield, or maybe we'll do something for Forza coming up, maybe with Fable. You buy the cover, you drop it on there, and then that's it. Like, it's much better than having to buy a $500 or $600 system that you want because you're a huge fan of the series. So I like that we're at least to that position where they worked around what I'm sure they weren't necessarily planning at first, because remember, there was a Halo Infinite console, but this seems to be a pivot for them and kind of leaning into what Sony has embraced, the idea of changing out the plastic shell around the core PS5 system, which in and of itself is technically a play off of what Microsoft did with the Xbox 360 when it originally came out with those faceplates. So this kind of feels like, I guess, an evolution of that without having to sell you the decals or the puffy stickers from back then that would always be on Xbox 360s, of course, when they'd get traded in because you had to rip them off and clean all the adhesives. It was a whole thing. So in this instance, I like it a lot more. And you know what? I probably will be checking out one of these covers. I guess the Starfield one that is technically the first one up, and we'll see exactly how it feels and how it sits on that system. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some details that got out there around that Immortals Phoenix Rising sequel. This comes way of a report from Axios and Steven Totilo, and there is quite a bit of information in this report. And I'll leave a link down below in the sources because I am incredibly disappointed that Ubisoft decided to pivot, basically shelve this project and moved Ubisoft Quebec, well, probably back onto Assassin's Creed. Let's face it, that is what Ubisoft is really pushing right now, probably because it's safe, but like, just take a look at this initial bullet point here, where it says, elaborating on that to Axios, 2 sources familiar with the game's development but not authorized to speak about the project told of plans for a vast game set across a fictionalized version of the Polynesian archipelago, made primarily by Ubisoft's Quebec studio, but developed alongside Polynesian consultants. In fact, the 2 games that they were going to be pulling inspiration from, get this, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker and Elden Ring. Now, apparently for Wind Waker's inspiration, it would kind of navigate you around by calling the wind and pushing you, or at least aiming you in certain directions. This project was codenamed Oxygen after all. But the thing with Elden Ring, and this is what I was hoping to hear about from different studios going forward, as of course we know, there's a bit of a lagging effect when it comes to adapting in gaming, and that's why we see these live service games like it's tough to really chase the live service trend, because by the time you develop and show up to the scene 4 or 5 years later, things have changed once again and you're on your back foot immediately. In this case though, Elden Ring was going to be an inspiration for how they set up sort of the map and the UI, as in it would be much more minimalistic and not as in your face with 80 different waypoints to go deal with. That's a big thing for Ubisoft and something they love to do with a lot of their games, so this would have been, I think, a great way to try something new. And in fact, the idea and the concept around it and some of the, I guess say, mythology and influence that they would be going with, not only with games, but also with culture, that I can't think of a game that would have necessarily done that in the past. So it would have felt very new. And you know what? It wouldn't have necessarily felt like a Ubisoft game. And I think that would have been one of the most exciting parts of the whole situation. But unfortunately, at least for now, it's been shelved. And, well, of course, Quebec off and running for another Assassin's Creed game. It's very possible they got moved to the next big Assassin's Creed, which apparently is going to be taking place in Japan, and just working to get that game out the door. So who knows, maybe they could double back and attempt this again, take it off the shelf and get to work on it, and I don't know, introduce something that isn't necessarily the cookie cutter formula that we've seen from Ubisoft in the past. I'm excited still for the idea of Assassin's Creed in Japan, but I gotta say, having this kind of in that Ubisoft lineup would be genuinely interesting. So I'm hoping they don't write this off completely and they go back and try it at some point. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, for the numbered mainline Metal Gear Solid games, which one is your favorite? Okay, Metal Gear Solid 1, 23%. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, 39%. That's kind of what I was expecting, is that Metal Gear Solid 3 would be like the big one that most people would vote for. Metal Gear Solid 2, 5, and then, wow, 4 is last, huh? Interesting. I still feel like there was a large impact, at least for me anyway, with Metal Gear Solid 2, just on the PlayStation 2, the look, like the visuals, the frame rate, but also how smooth the game felt, and just the attention to detail in that game. I remember seeing so much buildup through magazines and screenshots and discussions about that game from Kojima, and it felt like it was legitimately next generation worthy, which is something that has become less and less of an effect as we've gone through different generations. It was a fun time back then, but I get it. Metal Gear Solid 3, for a lot of people, it's probably peak Metal Gear. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Michael, who says, regarding the Starfield title screen, it is funny how a minimalistic design now equates to low effort in the eyes of some. Yeah, sometimes less is more with a title screen. Do you really want it to be that busy? Not that, again, it's a title screen, you're going to go past it relatively quickly, but I think back to something like Final Fantasy VII's title screen, which was brought up a lot, with just the Buster Sword there in the middle, and then like new game, load game, that kind of thing. At first glance, you go through it and you're like, okay, it's just a sword. But then you get through the game and you go back. That title screen hits a lot harder at that point, and it's just... It says a lot without having to put too much in front of you. And I still kind of think Starfield's title screen is the same way. Again, I know we're analyzing these start screens and stuff, and the fact that it garners so much conversation is weird in the first place, but the game just needs to get here at this point, or at least reviews need to get out there, and that's, again, August 31st. But I'm very excited for the game to come out, but also for the conversation to shift to, I don't know, the game itself. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's Charles Martinet now stepping back as the voice of Mario? And then even with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, apparently getting online support. We'll see about that one, I guess. And then also, what about the Xbox Series X covers that have been revealed? Are you going to pick one of those up? And then Ubisoft shelving Immortals Phoenix Rising sequel that genuinely felt interesting and, well, different from a lot of Ubisoft's lineup. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.